This is Randall Gaines, the Vice Chair of the National Board for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. It's a great privilege that I welcome you to SCLC National Convention's enlightening and informative presentations on the vital importance of preserving and protecting the right to vote. We live in a nation that's engaged in an evolving quest to live up to the noble ideals of its creed, a creed that's been predominantly professed. However, in regards to African Americans, the rights inherent within that creed were systematically denied. It was through the courageous and direct action of Dr. King and SCLC that the basic rights promised by that creed, after decades of suffrage and struggle, were finally won. We are now witnessing the most aggressive pushback against voting rights for Blacks and Black political progress that we've seen in 50 years. Obstructed voting laws, government-sanctioned gerrymandering, right-wing voter suppression efforts. We are once again facing a systematic attempt to roll back the clock. Our protests against these denials of voting rights cannot be put on pause. African Americans can't afford the pacifying tendency to become complicit or complacent, as long as America continues to place an expiration date on the fundamental voting rights of African Americans. SCLC's enduring destiny is to continue to make a difference where no difference has been made. We are committed to fighting to make sure that these inherent rights stay right. The protection of voting rights is currently the most important cause for African Americans. We are looking forward to insightful commentary from nationally recognized political strategist and dynamic community leader Tharon Johnson on the vital importance of protecting, and not only protecting, but exercising the right to vote. Tharon Johnson is the founder and CEO of Paramount Consulting Group based in Atlanta. He is nationally recognized as a political strategist and a trusted community leader. Tharon recently served as advisor to the Biden-Harris campaign in the battleground state of Georgia. He's frequently appeared as a guest contributor on CNN and MSNBC. Tharon has been named as one of Georgia's top most influential leaders, and he was also named as Campaign Manager of the Year by the American Association of Political Consultants. We are delighted that you have taken the opportunity to join us for what will be an enlightening and provocative presentation.
Hello, my name is Tharon Johnson, and I hope all of you all are enjoying the SCLC 63rd Annual Convention so far. I want to say a thank you to Mr. Randall Gaines for those kind words of introduction. Thank you so much for your military service. Thank you for your service on the SCLC board, and thank you for your public service in the state of Louisiana. For those of you who may not know me, I've worn a lot of hats in the great state of Georgia. I reside in the city of Atlanta, where I've had the honor and pleasure for working for so many great men and women. One of my highest honors is that I had the opportunity to serve as district director on Capitol Hill and also in the district for the late, great Congressman John Lewis. I've helped multiple mayors become Atlanta's mayor in this great city. I've served as a national Southern regional director for former President Obama's 2012 re-election campaign. And I'm the founder and owner of my own political and government consulting firm called Paramount Consulting Group. And you guys have maybe seen me pop up on your screen occasionally on CNN and MSNBC. When I was asked to be the keynote speaker for this great convention, and particularly for this session, I was pleasantly surprised. I was told that the leadership at the SCLC would be honored and extremely proud for me to accept this invitation. That came as a shock to me because I felt like the one who was incredibly honored and extremely proud to be asked to speak to such an incredible organization. So I want to thank Dr. Steele for his outstanding leadership in leading this wonderful organization, and all the executive leadership at SCLC for all that you do for us every single day in the fight for justice. And thank you for not giving up. And as a person who is a little younger and comes from a younger generation, on their behalf, I want to say thank you so much for paving the way to make sure that a person like me can own his own company and have the opportunity to work for so many great elected officials and to do the advocacy work that I do every single day in the great state of Georgia. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference has been a central piece of so many of our civil rights victories over the last 6 decades, from desegregation to the right to vote. You all have mobilized people educated them, and fought back against prejudice and injustice wherever you see it arise. So again, the honor is completely mine to be the keynote speaker today. I'm here to talk about two things: the right to vote and the fight for justice. Voting is one of our most sacred rights in this grand democratic experiment. The power to choose our leaders equally, one person, one vote, is the bedrock upon which this country exists. For a long time, that concept was not a reality. It took centuries for voting rights to spread among all people. It started exclusively with land-owning white men, with decades of passing before Black men could get the right to vote, at least in name, if not in practice. It took another 50 years after that before women had the right to vote. None of that progress would have been possible without the SCLC getting into some good trouble. There were protests, there were walkouts, and demands were spoke loudly, clearly, and in unison to the people in power. Our ancestors knew that meaningful, necessary change wasn't possible unless they made it happen. They were in the fight of their lives, and they fought like it. One of Martin Luther King Jr.'s most famous quotes is, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." For so long, that has felt true. We kept moving forward for a very long time. But just in the last 6 years, the arc has begun to bend backwards. We have lost some of the gains we've made, starting right at the ballot box. At the beginning of this year alone, over 250 bills were in play across 27 states, which would restrict the ability to vote, most of them targeting people of color. In Georgia, as the pandemic raged, we saw a huge number of people embrace voting by mail and ballot drop boxes in our pivotal 2020 and 2021 elections. You all remember that day on January 5th, when you probably turned on your television screen or you saw it on social media or heard it on your radio, that Georgia had made history. We had elected our first Jewish member of the United States Senate, and John Ossoff, and we had elected our first African-American male to the U.S. Senate, the Reverend pastor of the most popular African-American church in the world, Ebenezer Baptist Church. That person is the Reverend Raphael Warnock. But as a result of that monumental victory, it took less than 3 months for people in power to make it drastically harder to vote either of those ways that I just mentioned. That is, vote by mail or at the actual drop boxes. See, when we lose our voice in democracy, we quickly begin to lose much more. Many people ask me, why should I care about voting rights? Why is it so important? And I remind them that there's a small minority of backwards leaders in this country that are targeting vulnerable communities with laser-like precision to restrict their access to voting. Tens of millions of women no longer have the power to decide what happens to their bodies. Regulators are losing the battle to stop polluters from dirtying our air, water, and soil. And gun violence is running rampant across the country, and we're losing the tools to stop it. We are requiring so much from our teachers. We require for them to accept the students when they come in the mornings. We require them to teach our students. And now we're requiring them to protect them when someone decides to use a gun to go kill innocent lives. So that is why elections are so important. And I know I don't have to tell the members of this convention how elections have consequences. We need to elect good people who will make decisions on our behalf, but that's going to get harder and harder to do. Gerrymandering has happened all across the country. It has allowed most of our representatives to choose their own voters, not the other way around. The Electoral College continues to give some states more power than others. 40 million people in one state are represented by 2 senators, while 40 million people in 22 of our smallest states get 44 senators. Our electoral system has languished for 200 years, while our power, the people's power, has diminished with each of those passing years. Now, you're probably saying that this sounds all very dire and disappointing. Well, because it is. We've been at many crossroads in this country's history, and this may be the most pivotal moment since 1861, when our country was literally ripped in half. We are in the middle of a grand fight for justice, and we all have to get in the way. And we must determine what our future will be, not only for us, but for many generations to come behind us. So as challenging as all this sounds, we've done it before. We've been in this moment before. We've persevered. We have been able to work together to achieve so many monumental goals at the SCLC and all the countless other organizations that you work with. But I'm optimistic because I know the SCLC and the members that are here today at this convention have done it before. There are far more of us, people who are ready to lead a life in service to others for the betterment of all human mankind, than there are those looking out just for themselves. We're stronger than the people who will keep us down because we have the strength to love. We have the strength to look for the good in people around us, not the bad. We don't demonize and hate people who are different. We welcome them with open arms. When we do that, we're building a community, a beloved community, which can alter the course of history. Because at the end of the day, this is our true enemy. And it's an enemy that not many people like to talk about. And that enemy is hatred. Hatred drives prejudice, it drives malice, and it drives us apart. It stops us from recognizing our common humanity. We all have to think beyond our tribes and the lines between neighborhoods, cities, counties, states, and even countries. At our core, most of us really want just the same thing. Beyond the basics like food and water and shelter, we all want a sense of community, a purpose, and the dignity of being treated with respect. Too often, we get caught up in what makes us different than in what brings us together. We must embrace our common humanity if we want to defeat this enemy, hate, and the consequences of it. See, today's political and social economic climate threatens the very existence of a people who have struggled to survive and thrive in a constantly changing national and global environment. We must have the strength to love, even when, and especially when, that seems the hardest to do. You know, I've spent my entire life, primarily in Georgia, working in politics because I believe that politics gives the voiceless a voice. It is the best way to help those who need our help the most. And because I deeply believe in a better future and the people who can get us there. And that's why I've had the honor for working with so many great men and women. I've had the opportunity to learn from some of the greatest civil rights leaders of our time. And I've seen how much they gave to this country in the fight for justice and freedom. I believe in our ability to build the kind of world we want to live in. And I've known for a very long time that I want to be a part of it. Too often, the burden of building it has fallen on the backs of people who look like us, both literally and figuratively. All we can do is give all that we can, no matter how much or how little that is. When all of us do that together, we have the power to change the world. As I close, I just really want to just encourage everyone to stay encouraged. We live in some very tough times, but the theme of my speech today was about voting and justice. And so when you have an opportunity to get involved, to make sure that you're not only voting, but making sure that people are registered to vote. I can't tell you how important it is right now in 2022 that we pay attention to who our local officials are. Because many of these battles, many of these challenges that I just discussed are going to be determined by your state representatives and your state senators at your capital, your state capital. And your local elections also will matter. And so I just want everyone to stay encouraged. I want everyone to continue to be safe. We're not out of the woods just yet with this deadly pandemic that has really affected this country in a very negative way. So continue to be safe. Continue to tell your loved ones that you love them. Continue to make sure that you speak up and you speak out. When you see something wrong, when you see something that's not right, but make sure that you continue to get involved. And then lastly, let's make sure that we not only show up to these conventions for the SCLC, but we continue to support this wonderful organization with our dollars, with our time, and with our commitment. So again, I want to thank Dr. Steele and Reverend Lafayette one more time for inviting me to speak. And to all of you all, I hope that the rest of your convention inspires you to continue this fight for justice and to let you know that I'm here with you in Georgia. And I want everyone to continue to be safe and to be prosperous. God bless.